Our Old Testament lesson this morning comes to us from the prophet Isaiah, the 65th chapter, the 17th through 22nd verse. For I am about to create a new heaven and a new earth. The former things shall not be remembered or come to mind. But be glad and rejoice forever in what I am creating. For I am about to create Jerusalem as a joy and its people as a delight. I will rejoice in Jerusalem and delight in my people. No more shall the sound of weeping be heard in it, or the cry of distress. No more shall there be in it an infant who lives but a few days, or an old person who does not live out a lifetime. For one who dies 100 years will be considered a youth, and one who falls short of 100 years will be considered accursed. They shall build houses and inhabit them. They shall plant vineyards and eat their fruit. They shall not build and another inhabit. They shall not plant and another eat. For like the days of a tree shall the days of my people be, and my children shall long enjoy the work of their hands. Our gospel lesson this morning comes to us from the Gospel of Luke, the 21st chapter, the 1st through 6th verse. I invite us to stand as we are willing and able to do so in body and spirit for the reading of the gospel. He looked up and saw rich people putting their gifts into the treasury. He also saw a poor widow put in 2 small copper coins. He said, "Truly I tell you, this poor widow has put in more than all of them. For all of them have contributed out of their abundance, but she, out of her poverty, has put in all she has to live on." When some were speaking about the temple, how it was adorned with beautiful stones and gifts dedicated to God, he said, "As for these things that you see, the days will come when not one stone will be left upon another. All will be thrown down." These are the words of God, the people of God.
Thanks be to God. You may be seated.
Let God's people say amen. I don't know if I should ask for a show of hands of how many of you traveled to Los Angeles County last week. Anybody in Los Angeles County, maybe, I think it was Monday or Wednesday. There was a $2.1 billion jackpot. $2.1 billion won by one person in Los Angeles County. The ticket was bought, so come on, fess up. I mean, I'm not good at math, so I think a tithe on that would be 210 million. Is that right, you mathematicians out there? Is that right? What would Grace United Methodist Church do with $210 million? What are one of you out there going to do with $2.1 billion? Yeah. Retire, huh? Because, right, with $2.1 billion, of course, that's before taxes, but with $2.1 billion, everything in life would be fine. All our troubles would be gone. Isn't that what we think most days, that for people who are wealthy, I mean, not just a little bit rich, but wealthy. For people who are wealthy, life is easier. What would it be like? We think, well, I would just like to try it for a day. Or, well, maybe for a month. Okay, maybe for a year, I would like to try it. And we convince ourselves we'd be responsible with that kind of money. We would be generous with that kind of money because we know what it's like not to have it. And so for those of us who know what it's like not to have it, we would want to be sure that people who still don't would know how generous we are and could be. Not to have to worry about our bills. Not to have to worry about how we're going to put our kids through college, that they could go to any college they wanted, anywhere they wanted, and get the finest education, which would give them the finest job, which would give them the finest career, better than any we have ever had or even dreamed. And life would be Well, if not perfect, it would be better than maybe what we have right now. I remember many years ago preaching at a campus ministry at one of our United Methodist related universities, and there were all these college kids there, and I did this message around our relative abundance as citizens of the United States, our relative abundance as people of faith in the United Methodist Church, and how we're called to be good stewards of it, and how we're called to be generous, and that Jesus' math is different than the math they're learning in their department at college, and how Jesus' economic system was different than the economics they're learning in the business department, and I thought it was a marvelous sermon. And afterwards, the campus pastor took me to lunch, and we were talking and laughing, and he very gently said to me, "You know, Nanette, it's a bit difficult for college students to hear how much they should put their hearts into giving when they haven't really even been out to earn anything yet. It's a little hard for the message to get through that true value is not in the things that they want, like boats and cars and four-wheelers and all the things that they've always dreamed of, when they've not had them yet, in order to learn that, to give them away." I've reflected on that conversation over the years, and I've wondered, when is it that we learn that true riches, which is what we're talking about this morning, if only I had true riches. When is it that we learn true riches is not dependent upon our financial portfolio? What age would you say you learned that? Should I stop and have you turn to your neighbors and tell each other at what age you learned that really wealth was not the goal of all of life? Have we? Have we learned that? I once asked a person of wealth from this congregation who I have a tremendous amount of respect for, and I said, you know, when you have more than enough money, how much is enough? And he said, "You want the true answer or the answer that we should give the pastor?" I said, "Well, I want the true answer." And he said, "Well, for people of wealth, a little bit more. That's what the answer of what is enough. A little bit more." What do you think? Jesus is speaking into this in an interesting way this morning. And before we talk about the widow's mite, because then it's like, oh, the pastor's going to do what the pastor always does with that scripture. Before you go there, just stick with me for a minute. Understand the context of when Jesus is observing this and telling the story. Understand what he's doing with the disciples. He has come into Jerusalem in the Palm Parade already in Luke's Gospel. He spent the 20th chapter telling the disciples how awful the world is going to get for them. He's told them over and over again that they will suffer, that they will see him suffer, that there will be signs in the heavens and portents on the earth, that there will be wars and rumors of war, that there will be earthquakes and all kinds of horrible things will happen, and that they are to stay strong in their faith, and it will give them an opportunity to testify. What would you say about your faith? If everything in the world was turned upside down, and those of us who were people of faith were in fact being persecuted, if we were being arrested, if we were being brought in front of a kangaroo court and invited to tell someone why it is that we maintain our faith, would we maintain our faith, or would we give it away too quickly? Would we have something to say about why we remain a person of faith even if they're going to persecute us? What would that message be? I think it would be good for us to know that. Jesus is in 10 days facing his own death. He knows that. I don't know if he knew it down to the day, but he knew that it was within the distance which he could see. If you only had 10 days left to live, what would you want to teach your loved ones about what is valuable in this life? What message would you want to give them about what it means to have true riches? Or would you decide that since you never had you never reached the amount in your portfolio, you never reached the amount in your checking account, your savings account, you never reached the kind of home you always wanted, you never reached the car, you never reached the position, Would you tell them that all of those things are what is most important and they need to continue to strive for those no matter what? Or would you have a different message about what it means to be a person of true riches? Last week we celebrated All Saints Sunday. We named the saints from this congregation who have passed into God's full presence in the last year. We lit candles, we sang songs, we rang a bell, we had communion. We had guests in our congregation, family members of those who've gone before, some who live in this community and some from far away. You've been in those seats before. Remembering loved ones recently passed. You remain in those seats, remembering those you loved who are perhaps distantly past. If you could have one more conversation with them, and you asked them, what do you consider truly rich in the life and the years you have had here? What do you think they would say from the other side of heaven? What would you say to them? See, that's what Jesus is doing. He's saying to these disciples in the last part, in the last two verses of this scripture and from the 21st chapter, he says, look, you look at the temple and it's strong and it's tall and it's massive and it's adorned with precious gems and metals, but you see not even one stone will be left upon another. And then what will you have? That's the question. Then what will you have? If you lose everything, friends, what will you have? Isaiah speaks from the other side of it in our reading this morning. He's talking to the people who have lost it all. He's talking to the people, most biblical scholars would tell us, that have been left in Jerusalem. When the Babylonians came through, they killed so many and then they exiled so many more. They put them in small groups and they sent them out in what's called the Great Diaspora. But there were some who were left. And they were there for a generation and a half, if not 2 generations, before they were allowed to come back. And now as God's people are coming back, the remnant that are in the city, now they not only have to wonder and worry about how to survive in this destroyed city, now they have to wonder about what God's people are going to think as they come back in. Any of you ever been to a class reunion in a town where you don't live anymore? 20th class reunion, 30th, 40th, 50th, or beyond? Is there ever any awkwardness as you fly in or drive in from far away with the classmates you had who stayed in that town? Any of you ever experienced that those of you who are from far away may be more apt to come to those reunions than those who have lived in the town their whole lives? And you always wonder, they only have to drive 3 blocks. Why don't they come? They only live 3 blocks. Why wouldn't they want to spend time with you who've been out in the world, who've made your way? We see in movies and on TV where sometimes people will rent cars that they would only ever hope to own to drive to their high school reunions, to show everyone how well they've done. If they don't have hair, maybe they put shoe polish on there to make it look like they do. And we stand around and we look at each other and say, oh my gosh, that person has gotten old. How sad for them. I want us to get a feel for what it was like. For the remnant who stayed in Jerusalem, the children of the remnant who stayed in Jerusalem, who have been trying to survive in the midst of the destruction. And then here come these people that they know they're related to somehow by religious faith. They're related to because their ancestors knew one another, but they're very different now. Their life experience has been very different. And God is asking them to come together and to rebuild this mighty city. And they don't see things the same way. Maybe they would even vote differently given their different life experiences. And what's God going to do to unify them? What's God going to do to bring them together, to want to rebuild this mighty city, to rebuild the temple? What is God going to do to bring them together so that they don't continue simply to destroy one another? God gives them a vision that the prophet Isaiah says to us this morning. See, I am about to create a new heaven and a new earth. The former will not be remembered or brought to mind, God says through the prophet. Rejoice and be glad, for I am creating Jerusalem from joy and its people from delight. And I will take joy in Jerusalem and delight in its people, my people, God says. And there will be no more sounds of weeping, nor cries of distress. God unites them around this vision of joy and delight. They're standing in the midst of a destroyed city with people from different sides and different perspectives who all think they have suffered more than the other. And God unites them not through condemnation and judgment. God seeks to unite them through joy and delight. Can we? Can we unite as people of faith, as different as we are, around the possibility of God creating in us and through us a world of joy and delight? Or are we so cynical and bitter we don't think that would ever be possible anymore? That if we were asked to confess our faith in the midst of persecution, there would be nothing in our confession about joy and delight in our lives. We would witness to our faith in God because God was with us in the valleys of deep darkness. Praise God. And God was with us in the moments when we were facing great suffering. Praise God. Would we not have anything to say about when God was with us in the midst of joy and delight? In about 10 days, we'll gather around Thanksgiving tables in different places with different people at different times. You may already know what that will look like for you, or it may be something that's brand new for you. And everyone around your Thanksgiving table will see life the same way. Everyone around your Thanksgiving table will have similar things to say about the midterm elections. Everyone will believe the same way of whether there was fraud in the voting or whether the voting was legitimate. Everybody will see all of that. Everybody will see the way the Senate goes or the way the House goes, regardless of party. They'll see it the same way, and so you'll talk politics and have fun the whole time. So do we dread? Do we say to each other in the car on the way over, do not bring up politics? Well, you know Uncle Joe? Well, I don't care if Uncle Joe gets in your face and tells you you are wrong in everything you do. We will not talk politics. We're going to have fun because we're a family. Is there not joy and delight? Is there not that vision out there of what we can be? Even with destruction all around us, is there not joy and delight in what we can be? Jesus is facing into his crucifixion in 10 days. I don't want Thanksgiving to be a crucifixion that we're facing into in 10 days. Jesus, before he gets to that place, says to them, look at the treasury. People of wealth are coming and they're bringing out of their abundance. But here comes a widow who has 2 coins that are worth less than a penny. And she drops them in. And Jesus says to the disciples, she among all has given more than all those of wealth. Because out of their abundance have they given a portion of what they have, and she out of her poverty has given all. And we think, well, that's, Jesus, sorry, I don't want to offend you, but that's just stupid on her part. Because now she just becomes one more person living on welfare and expecting me to pay for her. Is that really the conversation we want to have in the presence of Jesus? Or do we want to take a step back, take a deep breath, and ask ourselves why Jesus thought that she, above all, had given more? Was it because she was free of the worry of what people would think about what she did? Was she willing to be free of the anxiety of not knowing where her next meal was? Had she decided that maybe there were worse things in life than death, and she so trusted in the message of Jesus that living or dying, she would win? If her family took her in and helped her to continue to eat and survive, she would win. If she starved to death, she still would win because she had nothing to fear, even of death itself. What would it be like if we laid aside what the world tells us makes us valuable and decided, in fact, to receive the gift of what God tells us makes life valuable, which is life itself? Life with each other. Life in a beautiful world. Life where we are able to sit down at the table with those we disagree with and love just the same. Love in the midst of the struggle. Love in the midst of the joy. Just to love, as Stephen Levine says in this book, A Year to Live. Finally, love is the most rational thing we can do. Love is the only thing that will change our hearts to let go of the need to be right all the time. Jesus has 10 days left to live. Friends, all of us in here probably have many, 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 many days left to live. Maybe 100 billion. We may have 100 billion. We may have 2.1 billion days left to live. You know, you don't have to wait till the last 10 to tell the people around you how much they mean to you. You don't have to wait till the last 10 days of your life to be thankful for the blessings in your life, for families of origin and families of choice, for churches that are on the upswing and churches that are in decline, for those third grade Bibles that have sat on your shelf since the third grade gathering dust, but for the church who gave it to you anyway. For that mom and dad or that grandpa and that grandma that made you so mad so many times. Maybe we can decide today, just for a few moments, to live with joy and delight. To make our way to those Thanksgiving dinners and say, I expect today that we are going to have joy and delight, without saying, and if we don't, I'll whack you under the table. We're going to have joy and delight because you know what? The people with whom we gather, they're part of God's family. And they're part of our family, whether we're biologically related or not. And in the midst of that family are true riches. Amen.